Welcome back to the Unleashing Potentials podcast. So, joining me today is Martin Salama. Martin, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Bernadette. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Likewise. So, can you tell us where about are you in the world? Where are you tuning
I am in Brooklyn, New York. Everything happens coming out of Brooklyn.
from? That's awesome. So happy to have you on the show today. Martin, I'm going to give you the floor to tell us more about you and your story and what you're doing in the community that you're in.
Cool, cool. So I'm known as the architect of the Warriors Life Code, and life stands for live incredibly full every day.
Mm,
And when I say that, I'm not just talking about being having a happy life. I'm
mhm,
also talking about having a meaningful life,
mhm,
because you could have a happy life that has no meaning,
mhm,
or you could have a meaningful life and not be happy. So for me, it's incorporating both of those things, because when you do that, it's happiness is for selfish reasons, which is a good thing to be,
mhm,
self-love, self-care, and happiness. And being meaningful is a selfless action, being out there for the world, altruistic, doing things to help the world move forward in whatever way that is. So
mhm,
when you have both of those, you're living a beautiful life.
mhm. Yeah, I love that. Mhm,
Thank you so much.
mhm. You're welcome. I love that you call it life code. How did you come up with the code?
So that's interesting. And the way that all came about was so in 2008, when the world fell apart financially,
Mm,
there was crazy stuff going on.
mhm,
Uh, I was caught up in what happened in the financial world. My wife and I were working on a project for 5 years to build a multi-million-dollar health and tennis club in New Jersey by what they call the Jersey Shore.
mhm,
All right. And we had spent about 5 years plus over $3 million of my money, family money, and investors' money to get us to the point to get all the approvals we need to build this multi-million-dollar health and tennis club. And it took us 5 years because we came up with the concept. We had to find the land. We had to then see if it was worth doing, feasibility study. Then
mhm,
we needed to get architects and engineers involved, then go to the city, and the city tell us, oh, you need to do a civil architect engineering as well. Make sure that parking and traffic and all these other things, how it's going to affect. And
mhm.
that took 5 years to go through this whole process.
Oh, wow.
And if it was 2006 or 2007 when we got approved, the
Mhm.
banking world was such that they were giving money away. It was like here in America we have Costco. I don't know. Do you have those in Canada as well?
We do. We do. Yes.
So when you're walking in Costco and they're giving you free samples,
Yes.
you could go for lunch at Costco.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it was kind of like that with the bank. You could go there to the bank and they would hand you money. you
Mhm.
know, I I refinanced my house, and 2 years earlier I'd done it, and they're like, "Oh, we valued your house at 500,000 before. Now we'll give you a value of 750, and here's the money."
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
Costco. So I was like, "Okay, great."
Mhm.
But for me, it happened to have been the summer of 2008,
Yeah.
and we go to the bank, and the bank says, "Yeah, we're not lending so much anymore." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Last year you couldn't give me the money fast enough. I
Mhm.
just didn't have all my ducks in a row." I go, well, things have changed. I'm like,
Mhm.
what? Well, everything's slowing down. A month later, September 2008, Bernie Madoff, subprime loans, the financial world crumbles like a house of cards. And where am I? I'm on the bottom of the house of cards. I'm the joker on the bottom of the house of cards.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm like, oh God, now what? Overnight, I was wiped out financially. I lost my money, my family's money that we put in, the investors' money. And it took me about a year to get through this depression that I was now in, which was like situational depression because I had bet the farm literally and
Mhm.
lost. So when I started to come out of it, going through some therapy and through some coaching, I said, okay, what
Mhm.
do I want to do with the rest of my life? I can reinvent myself now. I've always been an entrepreneur, always been a businessman. What do I want to do?
Mhm.
And I thought about my life and I realized what I liked doing most was getting involved in community events. I was always involved in community events. I was always a leader. And people would come in and say, well, I don't know how much I can offer, how much time I can give and what I can do. I said, great, come on in. Let's talk. Let's figure out what you can do and how much time you can give. And I realized I was being a life coach without really understanding that that's what I was doing. I would coach them and show them their potential. So I was like,
Mhm.
oh, that's great. I'll become a life coach. Well, about 2 months before the coaching training was going to start, it was my 24th wedding anniversary, which happens to fall out the day after Valentine's Day. And
Ooh.
my wife said, I'm done. I want a divorce. I'm
Mm.
like, oh my God, why does everything keep happening to me?
Mm.
I went right back into that victim mode thinking. Like, I can't get through this. Every time I get up, I get knocked down again. But I said, you know what? I'm going to go forward with the coaching anyway, coach training. And I think God was sending me a message saying, you know what? You want to do that? How about fix yourself first before you help to go and coach others? I'm
Mhm.
like,
Mm.
I should do this. And before that first weekend, they sent us a list of books, the coaching training school, and said, read a couple of these books. One of them was a book by Don Miguel Ruiz called The Four Agreements.
Yeah.
You know that book?
Might have heard of it. I haven't read it. Tell me
Okay.
more.
It's one of my favorite books. Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
Mhm.
And they are be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. Always do your best.
Mm.
And when I read Don't Take Anything Personally, it was as if he had just told me a secret that the whole world had been telling me my entire life.
Mhm.
But until that moment, my ears couldn't hear it. I wasn't taking it in.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I realized that's what I was doing my whole entire life. I was taking everything personally. I was putting the world on my shoulders. I was a people pleaser. And looking back now, I was pleasing no one. So it's not a very good people pleaser, you know?
Mhm.
But I believed that I was, but nobody was really happy. So I went in with this mindset that, okay, I'm ready to learn. And when I got there, they said to me, you don't have to be who you think you have to be. You can be whoever you want to be.
Mhm.
So that, after reading the four agreements and don't take anything personal, I'm like, okay, great. Let me see what's not working for me. Let me see what's working for me and get through that.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And now, a few years later, I looked in. I originally became a divorce recovery coach, which makes sense. I just came through a divorce,
Yeah.
right? And I was going through coaching at the same time, which is God's way of saying, okay, let me help you get through this,
Mhm.
which was really what happened. And I said, let me show other people how they can recover from the emotional pains of divorce, whether they asked for the divorce or whether they were asked for the divorce. Either
Mhm.
way, you have emotional pains, men and women.
Yeah.
Men don't like to admit they're feeling some pain, but
Mhm.
we do.
Mhm.
And I did that for a few years. And then I looked at myself and I was so happy where I was in my life. I had just gone through losing 65 pounds in 9 months.
Mhm.
And I said, I love my life because while I was doing that, I was becoming more self aware. I thought I was self aware. What I came to realize was I was self conscious and I was using the term self aware when I was really self conscious.
Mhm.
And I recently came out with a card deck. And in the card deck, there's a card that talks about being self aware versus self conscious.
Mhm.
And on June 14th, I'm coming out with my book called Warrior to Warrior. Okay. How to go from being somebody who worries all the time to being a warrior, strong, and all that.
Mhm.
And what happened, how these things came along, is I was loving my life. I was loving what I was doing. I was becoming more self aware, moving my mindset to abundant instead of lack, which is really, I can't do this, I can't do that, and realize, how can I do it? Let me do it.
Mhm.
And I was doing something that I don't was never very good at. I'll be honest. I was meditating with a guided meditation, but I have ADHD, so I'm sitting there for 10 minutes saying, "When is this going to be over?" And I'm thinking 8 million thoughts, and wondering how does anybody just not think about anything in coach in meditation? I don't get it.
Mhm.
But I had this download of information one time that I loved my life, and I wanted to show other people how they could love it too.
Mhm.
So after I finished meditating, I wrote for 2 hours. And out of that came the word life. live incredibly full every day.
Mm,
Right.
I love
So
that.
now I'm loving my life. I'm loving everything. I started dating.
Hmm.
And when I would go out on the dates, now that I understood what my values were, thanks to coaching and getting coached,
Hmm.
I was I was going on these dates and talking with these women and getting to know what their values were and
Hmm.
seeing, do they align with what my values are. Because what I learned was, in my first marriage, my wife and I, our values were nowhere near to each other, and we were codependent. So I
Hmm.
was determined not to get into a codependent relationship again,
Hmm.
because it didn't work out well the first time.
Hmm.
One day I went out on a date and the woman was hitting every value. When again, same thing. It just kept building. About a month into it, I said, I got to tell you something. I want to tell you something. You don't need to say it back to me, but I'm falling in love with you because I love who you are and who you show up to be. And I love that you see me as I am and you're not trying to change me.
Hmm.
And 5 years, 2 years later, we got married. And as of June 3rd, 2025, 2023, we're married for 5 years.
Wow, that's an incredible story.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I love that you're blending your personal experience, your triumphs and failures and pain and success all together just to help people. And
Yeah.
the fact that you realized that you had to go deeper than what was there, what people were seeing. I think most of us do lack. We sort of have the ability, but at times we refrain ourselves from doing it. We all
Yeah.
have the ability to go deeper. The reason
Mm-hmm.
most of us don't go there, the deeper we go within ourselves, the more painful it gets.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
where I love where your work comes in. You've
Thank you.
done it and you're teaching others to do it.
Thank you so much for recognizing that, because
Mhm.
really the best coaches out there are the ones who coach from experience.
Mhm.
You say, I know where you've been. You're not alone. Let me show you how you can find the other side of what you're looking for
Mhm.
what you're looking for. Because very many of us, like myself as a people pleaser, I would rationalize that all the things I was doing was for the greater good.
Mm.
But what I've learned going through coaching, and this is something I've trademarked, that the word rationalize is really two words: rational lies.
Mhm. Mhm.
And let me pull out my card that I have in my card deck that talks about that word,
Mhm.
rationalize. Okay. Whenever you think you may be doing something that goes against your values, you will rationalize all the reasons why it's okay. What you're
Mhm.
really doing is lying to yourself that it's rational to think that. They're nothing more than rational lies. I'll give you
Wow.
an example.
Mhm.
You wake up in the morning and you know what? I'm a little tired today. I don't feel like exercising. Is that the truth? Or are you giving yourself permission not to exercise? Lying to yourself that it's rational that I'm tired, so I won't exercise.
Mhm. Mhm.
Most of the time, if you start exercising about 10 minutes into it, you go, I'm so glad I decided to do this.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I
So
love that.
now,
Yeah,
take it and apply it to other things. And before you make a decision saying, is this a reason or is this an excuse that's really a rational lie?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I love that. I love that you brought the word people pleasing. And I love your bravery and honesty to acknowledge that that's what you were doing. Some of us,
Yeah.
we don't want to acknowledge that.
No,
There's
no.
a sense of shame and guilt that's tied to it that we don't want to be that open for others to see.
Right.
Um,
That
yeah.
vulnerability that you need
Mhm.
to bring out.
Mhm. And it starts very young. When did you caught yourself doing that in the phase of your career? Was it
Okay.
after the divorce or
So
prior
I
to that?
figured it out after my divorce as I was going through coach training
Mhm.
that I was a people pleaser. But I also figured out when it started.
Mm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And listen, we all have our childhoods. We all have certain traumas that happen in our lives, even
Mhm.
tragedies. Hopefully, less for others than for most.
Mhm. Yeah.
For me, when I was 10 years old, I had a tragedy. You see this picture right here of this
Mhm.
little boy behind me? That's my brother Michael. When
Mm.
he was 5 years old, he was tragically killed by a school bus.
Oh.
And I was 5 years older than him. And when he was born, I was thinking, wow, I've got my brother. I have four older sisters. This is the guy. He and I are going to be the partners in crime. We're going to go out there and we're going to set the world on fire together. The Salama boys,
Mm-hmm.
like Eminem, Michael and Martin, Martin and Michael. We're going to go out there and set the world crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And when we lost him, I'm a 10-year-old boy.
Mm.
Okay. And nobody told me this, but I said to myself, oh my God, I'm the guy. I've got to make sure that I make my parents happy. They never said that to me,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a 10-year-old thinking I'm the one that has to carry on the name. I've got the pressure on me to carry the legacy.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I've got to make sure that they're never unhappy. So it's
Mm-hmm.
my job to make sure they're happy. And that's when I became a people pleaser. And now I call myself, I'm a recovering people pleaser.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Um, that must have been very hard to deal with. Obviously, any death is so hard. Um, how did you deal with the trauma of losing a sibling?
It was very, very difficult. And remember, I'm old. Okay, I'm 60. So this
I
was
didn't say it.
I don't feel old. I feel like I'm in my 20s, okay? But I'm 60 years old, so it was 50 years ago that this happened.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 70s, it's not like today. Okay? They didn't say, "Oh, let's take the children to therapy. Let's get them grief counseling."
Mm-hmm.
My mother grieved. My father grieved. And I remember there were times when my mother didn't want to come down to the dinner table. It
Mm-hmm.
was too hard for her. She lost her baby.
Mm-hmm.
And it took her a little while, but somebody reached out to her and said, Esther, there are other women in the community who have lost children. We'd like to put together a support group for you and those women so you have something to work through.
Mm-hmm.
Over the next 40 plus years, my mother and these women built a group of support for women. And my mother would go to these women in our community when another woman would lose a child and tell them something nobody else could say to them. I know how you feel. And she was able to do that. Now, me, for many years, we didn't talk about it. We just didn't. It wasn't done. That wasn't the way things happened.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went through this, and I went through some therapy in my lives and stuff like that, and there was always that anchor of losing my brother. But nobody ever got deep into it enough with me. And it might have been me pushing back. I'm not sure. But at that moment, when I was down, lost all my money, was going through a divorce and trying to figure myself out, I opened myself up to say I'm pretty much at the bottom. I've got to allow myself to figure out what's not working.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was that admission that I need to fix myself and willing to do the work to do it that made the difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, willing to do the work. Some of us are not willing to.
No.
It's too painful. Or we make excuses. I used to be one of those people, but after a lot of wake up calls, I knew which path to take, which
Mm,
was to be authentic, to be myself, and to share and to help others.
beautiful.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So your cards that you have, are they gonna be released with the book or they've been
Right.
released
So the
separately?
cards are available now.
They
And
are.
anybody
Okay.
can get the cards and they can flip through them and use them as a tangible way to just get a little bit of an idea. For example, tell me a number between 1 and 32.
6.
6.
Mm-hmm.
All right, number 6. So number 6 is part of a series which starts at number 5, which
Mm-hmm.
is called The Cycle of A's.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And you'll see there's a circle with 3 words.
Yeah.
And the first word is ask. The cycle of A's ask. Ask for what you want. Ask the universe, God, or your higher power for what you want.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the concept of the law of attraction comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
That definition is I attract to my life whatever I give my energy, focus, and attention to, whether wanted or unwanted. Even if you've never heard or may not fully understand the law of attraction, you're still living by its laws. It's a universal law that
Mhm,
operates in our lives every minute of every day.
mhm,
So for me, that's the first step. Ask God, ask the universe for what you want.
mhm,
But it's not enough.
mhm.
That's where the other two come in.
Yeah.
Start doing the work for what you want. You can't wake up tomorrow and say, I want $1 million. And then the next day, open up and there's a chest of $1 million of gold at your at your doorstep. How wonderful would that be? But it doesn't work that way.
It would. Um, I'm sort of not shocked or surprised that you pulled that card. It's um it's interesting because I do believe in source or everything in that card.
Mm-hmm.
My mind is blown that you pull it up because I believe in angels, spirit guides, and all of it. And
That's the energy of magic coming to play right here.
mhm. And it's yeah, it's puzzling how they keep doing this to me. But it is. It's like a game for them, and I love it. So I
Right.
was born open psychically as a child, and you have that card, so I can kind of open and talk a little bit about that. So I've seen angels and deceased loved ones and so on. Um, Recently, I've been going through a spiritual awakening and doing all that work. And with the podcast, um, obviously, I told them I have no experience. Like I don't know what I'm doing half of the time, but I have a story, and
Mm-hmm.
other people have stories that they can share. So I didn't have much guests or people to interview. So I asked and I wrote them through letter and in my mind, always speaking. I said, if you guys want me to do this, please send people to come to me. And the last 2 weeks, there's been so many people that wants to come on the podcast that I don't know. I'm still trying to digest it.
but
That's
but
what
you
that card
acted.
means.
You acted, and that's how we got in touch. You put into a Facebook group that we're both part of. I'm looking for guests,
Yeah.
and people reached out to you. That was the act. And you probably had this mindset of, well, let's just see what happens.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
didn't have a mindset of, oh, please, God, please give me 8 million people to come and interview.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the cycle of A's. You asked, you acted, and you had an attitude of, I'm not attached to the outcome emotionally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's true. That's what I had to do. Um, I love that you work with mindset because I think, if I'm being honest, most, if not all of our mindsets are uh, kind of malfunctioning, if I may use that word,
Yeah,
because it
why not?
starts so young. How can we have a positive mindset for ourselves and share that with others?
Right. So I would love to say that I was like this my whole life, right?
Mm.
But I really wasn't. And for most of my life, I thought I was self aware until I realized that really what I was self conscious.
Mm.
And it's another card in my deck, if you don't mind that
Yeah,
I talk about it.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Let me find. So here it's number 30. It
Mhm,
says self consciousness comes from a place of negative energy, guilt, conflict, and doubt.
mhm,
Self consciousness is more outward directed. It's being more concerned about what others are thinking of you and how the situation is going to affect you. You
mhm,
probably react to uncomfortable situations instead of respond.
mhm,
When you're self conscious, you're questioning your decisions. There's a
mhm.
little more to it, but you get the hint. You get it.
Oh, I understand exactly what it means.
There you go. And also for the audience, self awareness comes from a place of positive energy, acceptance, contentment, self assuredness. Self
Mhm,
awareness is more inward facing. You have an accurate and realistic understanding of how you are responding to situations and how you feel about things. So
mm,
for me, most of my life, I thought I was self aware, but I was fooling myself. I was really self conscious. I cared what everybody else thought. My ego came to play, and I would say, oh, I'm self aware. No, I'm self
mhm,
conscious.
mhm,
So now self awareness comes from humility acceptance as to who I am and what the greater world is about, and that whatever's going to happen is part of the greater plan.
Hmm. I love that. I think you've found yourself, Martin. You have. Um, because many of us, we're existing, we're not living.
Right.
Um, we, excuse me, we let our mind dictate what our hearts should.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's another thing I talk about. So for someone that's listening to this and they're saying, how can I ever get to be like that? First thing is, I'm not like this all the time. It's impossible for someone to be that way all the time.
Hmm.
It's where I strive to be or
Hmm.
thrive at most of the time. But
Hmm.
I have my downtimes. And the reason I'm telling you this is so that your audience understands is that no matter where you are, take
Yeah.
little steps.
Hmm.
Start by waking up in the morning and being grateful that you're 6 feet above the ground instead of 6 feet below the ground,
Hmm.
right? Even if it's 6 inches above the ground, it's better than being below the ground.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You know what? We all do a pretty good job at digging our own graves. We
Exactly.
don't even need help for that.
Exactly.
For some people, I'm like, you got this. Let me know when you want to come out. I've done it most of my life, and I've realized it's like a cycle, like the card you just showed me, right? We dig, we come out, we get some fresh air or food, and it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And it takes some of us a lot of time to realize that this is actually what's going on. We recognize where we are, but it's hard for us to change direction or focus.
Right. Right. Absolutely. 100%. And it takes work and it takes commitment to yourself. And one of the things that I found going through the whole change from Martin 1.0 to Martin 2.0,
Mhm.
the metamorphosis, the transformation, whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
was that I needed to work on relationships. But the first relationship I had to work on was with myself.
Mhm. Mhm.
I had to like myself. How was I going to go out and find somebody to like me if I didn't like me or
Mm.
love me if I didn't love me? And it was funny because recently I was on a call with my team and we were joking and I said something funny about myself. And they go, "We love that you do that." And I said, and they put it down, they made it into a quote for me. If you can't laugh at yourself, you can't like yourself. And if you can't like yourself, you can't love yourself.
Oh, I love that.
Thank
That's
you.
very true. That is. Um, Self-love. That's another big topic.
Yeah.
Many of us, even as children, we are taught to love a certain way. It's like it
Mm-hmm.
was a map. When really, love is what we make it. It's not what we're told it is or what we see it is, not necessarily, because not everything we see is actual love.
Right.
Can you touch a little bit with mindset and different types of loves that society puts in place to define who we are and how we succeed?
Right. Absolutely. So we're all taught that love is the ultimate goal that we need to have. Love in our lives, love with others, love with ourselves, love, love, love. But it becomes such a big word that people look at it, they go, all right, I'll do whatever. Whenever anybody tells them to do, they say, okay, makes sense, without getting into the depth of it and understanding that there's more to it. And then people will look at it and saying, oh, self-love, that's selfish. I believe it's the total opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Self-love is selfless because if you're doing the right kind of self-love, you're doing it so that you can serve others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you can't serve others if you're not serving yourself,
Mm-hmm.
even to the point of what's considered self care. For each person, it's something different. It could be, I'm going to exercise this morning. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to sleep enough hours in the night. I'm going to go for a manicure. I'm going to go for a massage, whatever it is, whatever that is for you individually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as long as you're not hurting somebody in the process, that's the difference of where the people pleaser comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Because the people pleaser thinks, oh, if I make everybody else happy, then I'll be happy. No, if I'm happy, then I could spread my love and my happiness to others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love
It's
that.
it's that thing of, does the cart come before the horse? Do I have to see it before I believe it? No, if I believe it, I'll see it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's true. That's very true. Martin, let's go back to the beginning of the episode when when you were talking about COVID.
Mhm.
Um, give me an example of one of your clients, Roberta. Give
Yeah,
us a glimpse of what she was facing then.
absolutely. So I'm going to read something that she wrote
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
so that I get it right.
mm-hmm,
Give me one moment to just scroll down and find Roberta. Here
mm-hmm,
we are. Roberta is a friend of mine who saw me on Facebook. She saw me on Facebook, and I had just done a Facebook live stream where I said, guys, I get it. I understand what's going on. Because what had happened was the day before, it was May of 2020, 2 months into COVID. Okay. And the world was thinking, wait a minute, we're only supposed to be inside for 2, 3 weeks, and then everything's going to break up and everything's going to be fine.
mm-hmm,
But you know what? I made sure every day I went outside, I put on the gloves, I put on the mask. I even went just to the supermarket, whatever it was I needed to do. So it was 2 months in, and my wife and I are sitting around the house, and she has three of her own children, and I live with my new wife and my her children. And I said, let's go to Manhattan, let's go to New York City, and spend the day there. And if you've ever been to New York or any big city, you know what it's like to drive in the streets in Manhattan. It's crazy. So we drive, and we're able to drive straight down Fifth Avenue without missing a traffic light. That's how few cars there are. And I'm looking around, and I turned to my wife. I said, Sarita, where is everybody? What are they all worried about? And I realized the last 10, 12 years, going through 2008, my divorce, losing the weight, putting it, figuring it all out,
mm-hmm,
had prepared me for anything that would come up in my life,
mm-hmm,
even COVID.
mm-hmm,
So I got onto Facebook and I said, guys, I get it. Let me show you how to go from being worried to a warrior. And and Roberta was somebody who answered the call. And she said, within a couple of months, I had direction, focus, and a renewed energy around all the possibilities I can now pursue. Thank you, Martin, for helping me get my life back on track. She was somebody who had just been let go from her job due to COVID. And
mm-hmm,
she's like, what am I going to do now?
mm-hmm,
How am I going to get through this?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And she needed somebody to ground her, to bring her back and understand, where am I and where can I go from here?
mm-hmm,
And that's one of the beautiful things about a coach, not just me. Any good coach is there to be support, to be objective, and to be an accountability partner.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very powerful. That you were able to help her in that way, and
Yeah.
she was brave and courageous enough to allow you to help.
Mm-hmm.
Many of us, we think we know it all.
Yeah.
We know it all, so therefore we don't need help or someone else telling us how we should pursue our goals or dreams or how we should even do them, right? How can we be humble individually and collectively to bring down some barriers to allow resources and help to come in to support us for our
Yeah.
goods?
Yeah. Well, first thing is, we all have to recognize nobody knows it all.
Yeah. Oh, I
None of
believe
us
you.
are know-it-alls.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And that as soon as you can recognize that you're not a record, and that you meaning the person out there, not you, as soon as a person can recognize that they don't know everything, they're allowing themselves to say, I can learn more.
Mm-hmm.
And I can be okay with seeing what works and what doesn't work,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and enforcing what works and minimizing what doesn't work. I'd love to say eliminating, but it's a lot of work. And I don't work in absolutes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're never going to be perfect, because you're never going to be perfect. So it's impossible. I'm using absolutes here for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
because there's always something more, because there has to be more.
Mm-hmm.
If there was everything, you'd be God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe you. Um, So what kind of people do you coach or companies? Do you work with the food industry?
I mostly work with entrepreneurs
Okay.
but I work with every, I mean, I've had entrepreneurs, housewives, young 25-year-old man who's saying, I'm not sure. I think I'm just here to help other people figure out what they want in life as their tool, but whatever I do is fine. But lately, I've been finding more entrepreneurs who want to understand that they can have a successful business and
Mhm.
be able to have a successful life at the same time.
Mm,
One doesn't have to be sacrificed for the other.
mhm, mhm.
And
Yeah.
that goes for anybody in any level of business
Mhm,
and life that they're in.
mhm.
They find now, I don't believe in the word work life balance because it's never going to be on the same balance,
No.
but there has to be some balances in your life as to this is 80% important, this is 60% important, this is 20%. And that's how you find your balances.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, and it's important to keep the balance we have on a scale that works for us because
Right.
we can be so driven that the car breaks down, which would be our body,
Right.
our brain, right? How can we stay driven, focused, and have a happy, healthy life?
So for me, it's really putting together some routine. Wake
Mm,
up every morning, and
mhm,
write down in a good quality notebook, like a moleskin or something,
mhm,
3 things you're grateful for.
mhm,
If you're spiritual, take a moment and then pray to God.
mhm,
Spend a few minutes. I pray to God every day. I'm Orthodox Jewish. I wear tefillin. I put on the shawl. You
mhm,
know, you see the very religious men who wear that stuff. I do that too, but I live in the modern Orthodox world.
mhm,
Okay?
mhm,
But I do that every morning.
mhm,
And there's a point when I'm putting the straps around my fingers, and the words that there are in Hebrew are God is betrothing to me his support
mhm,
as I am doing what my connection to register that God is part of my life. And
mhm,
then I say my mantra. To me, my mantra is I live incredibly full every day. And that sets me up for opportunities in the day
mhm,
instead of looking for the problems.
mhm,
I, I'm grateful. I pray to God. And I look for opportunities by saying I live incredibly full every day.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I
You
love that.
start with that mindset, it'll set you on your path.
Mhm, mhm. Um, for some of us, self-care, you know, I think it gets misunderstood. The more I'm learning about it, it's not understood at everyone's level. To some, you need money to take trips and lavish lifestyle. To some, it's having a healthy meal, enough water, and exercise. Um, can you tell me what self-care means to you and how has it impacted your life?
Okay. So for me, success financially used to be the goal.
Mm,
If I'm financially success, then everything will fall into place.
mhm,
And then self-care will come along. To me, self-care means recognizing that I need to get up every day, do what I said, exercise, put that as part of my routine,
mhm,
and make my day have certain meaning for me and for others.
mhm, mhm.
So and by self-care, and one of the things that came out of my divorce was I learned how to cook. Okay. I needed to adapt. I needed to learn how to cook. And now
Mm,
I love to cook.
mm,
I
mm,
love it. If somebody says, what do you love to do for fun? I love to cook. And I love even more having family and friends around, eating my food, enjoying each other's company.
mm,
So for me, self-care is part of that is getting into the kitchen, being in that mindset of imparting my love into what I do, into the food that will then go into nourish the ones
mhm,
I love.
mhm. Well, you learning how to cook is a testament for those who say, I can't cook. I'm not
Right.
a cook. They'll find a reason similar to yours to learn to cook. I hope they don't. But with divorce, it doesn't have to go, too extreme just to cook. What are some of your favorite meals that you make?
Well, to tell you the truth, there are so many. But what I did recently, I started doing YouTube cooking and coaching videos. So if you go
Oh.
to YouTube and put in Martin Salama, you'll
Hmm.
get some of the videos. For example, a lot of the dishes I made are Middle Eastern based because I grew up in a Middle Eastern family. My
Hmm.
father's from Egypt, my mother's from Syria. They came to America, found each other, got married, and we live in a Middle Eastern Jewish, Sephardic Jewish Middle Eastern community in Brooklyn, New York.
Hmm.
So I have things like chicken and spaghetti, okay, which has some allspice in it and a little bit of cinnamon in it and tomato paste, and it's a wonderful dish,
Hmm.
right? And then I have things like mac and cheese because I found a great mac and cheese recipe with artichokes and spinach. And
Hmm.
what I do in the coaching video in the cooking videos is I coach as I'm cooking. So I'm doing two of the things I love most at the
Hmm.
same time.
Wow. I love that. You bring your passion to others
Exactly.
and you're helping them through that.
Yeah.
That's the best way, I think, for our souls to be home on earth. That's really,
Yep.
really cool. Um, I wanted to go over, well, you go over the 7 keys that are in your book. 7 step you used in your book.
Sure. So in my book, which is coming out June 14th,
Hmm.
okay, on Amazon, and hopefully when you'll put the link into the chat,
I will.
into the notes, which is really connectwithmartin.com.
Hmm.
But in the book, I talk about the 7 steps to uncover um, the life that you always want.
Hmm.
And the 7 steps go like this. Let me pull out. I got an easier way. It's on one of my cards as well. And this way
Hmm.
I can just read it right off the card without having to look through the book. That's what's great. The book helps the book, the cover, the cards help the book.
Hmm.
So unlock and unleash. Unlock what's keeping you stuck and unleash the frustration you're holding so you can start your journey.
Hmm.
Navigate how your emotional roller coaster is holding you back. Choose the values that are most important in your life.
Hmm.
Obtain the tools you need to correctly respond to all situations. Visualize who you want to be from here on out. Embrace the new life you're creating and enjoy your endless potential. And reclaim your strong, confident, happy life to live incredibly full every day.
Mm,
So
I love
each one of
that.
this is a step that in the book I go deeper into them and talk about them. And I bring in, as you mentioned earlier, stories of myself and some
Mhm,
of my clients and
mhm,
how putting them into action made the difference.
mhm,
I love to say, somebody said this to me, and now I love to use it myself. This isn't a book you just read and put down. It's one of those books you leave by your bedside and
mhm,
you refer to as you're growing, as you're going.
mhm,
And one of the things I put in here right at the beginning of the book is a QR code. And when you click on the QR code,
mhm,
you get success activities that go along with the book to help you not only read it, but put in practical uses to make the changes.
mhm, mhm. I love that. Those are my favorite type of books, actually, uh, because I've read different books, but I'm like, where can I apply it? I love the books like yours that gives the tools and the steps to apply it.
All right. I
Yeah.
call them success activities
Hmm.
because to me, every person's success is defined by what's successful for them.
Hmm. Hmm.
For a woman who gets to stay at home and be a stay at home mom and watch their children grow and be happy, that's success.
Hmm.
Okay, it's not having a $1 million home and jewelry, coming off on every piece. For her, success is happy children, happy life, happy husband, happy love, so that they could do whatever they want and with their husband or whatever. For it could be another woman who loves to work and have a home life. That's my wife.
Hmm.
My wife is in corporate. She, as much as she says I want to stay home, if she's home 2 days, she wants to kill herself. She likes the balance of the work, and she works. She's not just in corporate; she's high up managing director at JP Morgan.
Mm-hmm.
So she's no slouch. She's a freaking genius. When
Mm-hmm.
my kids met her, they go, Dad, she's smarter than you. I go, good. It's a challenge. And believe me, she challenges me all the time.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much because in my case, I'm a single mom, stay at home. I was telling someone how society views stay at home moms. Um, how they say they don't really do much, just lazing around. That is far from the truth.
If
And
only.
yeah, yeah. And people ask me, how do you have a podcast and the kids and everything alone? I make time for it because that's what fills my soul. It gives me so much joy to have heartful conversation like we're having, right?
Yes.
Finding the time.
Right.
And I don't know, I like to tell people I'm nobody. Right? I'm not, right? People that's one thing I talked about in so much detail on my podcast. One, I was adopted from a poor third world country, just how people look at it, right? And I just don't have all the blings society deem someone to have in able to be worthy. I have found
Right.
my worth in helping people and
Right.
being in my own place and space. Can you
Beautiful.
give me some advice? And any other single parents that are listening, that are dealing with the same criticism from people?
Yeah. Well, first thing is I want to acknowledge something. When someone asks you, how are you able to do this? You have to tell them that because my why is greater than the excuses.
Mm,
Because why is I use why as an acronym for what's hurting you.
mhm,
What's pulling at your soul to tell you you've got to do this,
mhm, mhm,
right? So that's number one. That's how you do it because my why is greater than the reason why not.
mhm, mhm,
Okay. But to answer your question of what can I tell people out there about that is don't let anybody tell you who you should be. There's only one person who knows who you should be, and that's you.
mhm,
And you might not know who that is right now. And it will change every day, every week, every month
mhm,
as you grow and as you allow yourself to let things happen. You may find yourself saying, this is what I want. And then a month from now, a year from now, you go, that's really not what I want anymore.
mhm,
And that's
mhm,
okay.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Martin, thank you so much for your time today. Where can my listeners find you?
So the best way to find me is go to connectwithmartin.com.
Mhm,
On there, you can download a free a worksheet on the cycle of A's that we
mhm,
talked about earlier to get an understanding about it. They could buy the cards there. And as of June 14th, you could click on a link there that'll take you to Amazon to buy the book.
mhm,
I'm very excited about the book coming out
mhm,
because it's taken what I've written over the last 2.5 years and what I've learned over the last 15 years as to who I was to who I am now and who I want to be
mhm,
and putting it in. So connectwithmartin.com.
mhm. Thank you so much for sharing that. Before I let you go, I have five signature questions I ask everyone. It
All
might
right.
change over time, but it is those five for this year. What does potential mean to you?
Potential means there's no limit to what you can do.
I love that. What is your favorite song?
My favorite song, my favorite song, I'd have to say, is the song Better Place by Rachel Platten.
Mm,
I first heard the song when I was dating my wife, and the words just resonated with me. And then, guys, go out there and look for her YouTube video on it. She does some beautiful things with it. So
mhm,
that I have to say,
mhm. Thank
Better
you.
Place.
Thank you. Who is your favorite author other than you?
I have to say, my favorite author is the woman who I was very fortunate enough to have her write my foreword for my book. Her name
Mhm,
is Genevieve Davis, and she
mhm.
writes these books on magic, and that you
Oh,
have the magic within you.
I love that. Do you like cats or dogs?
I think I like dogs.
Dogs? I
Yeah.
have cats.
I had a cat when I was a kid. He
Mhm.
was a Siamese cat. He was a little toughy, so
Yeah.
I guess a little trauma for when I'm a child.
Yeah. Last question is, what's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie. That's a tough one. But I'd have to say that if you're asking me on the spot like this, I'd have to say Field of Dreams
Mm,
with
okay.
Kevin Costner. I cry every time in that movie. Every single time I cry.
Yeah, that's awesome. Martin, any last words of wisdom, encouragements for the listeners that are listening or watching?
Absolutely. Go out there, enjoy life so you can live incredibly full every day.
I love that. Thank you so much, Martin, for your time. Thank you for spreading hope, love, light, and for empowering people to become more, to be exactly who they should be instead of what society think they should be. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bernadette.